Hi, I'm Richard Rogers, and I absolutely hope that you enjoy today's spiritual message. You know, we at Unity of Phoenix Spiritual Center are committed to helping people live better lives. We're going to provide you tools over and over, spiritual tools that allow you to live your best possible life. And if you want to leave a donation to continue to allow the work that we do to support other people just like you, we say thank you. Thank you for your generosity, because this ministry is committed to making the world a better place. Okay, so this month I've been doing a series on healing the world, because I have this underlying belief that right now the world could use a little healing, right? And I began with this idea of looking at violence, and that how can we be in the world and even be in disagreement with one another and not be in violence? So that how do we do that in our families? How do we do that in the larger world? How do we do that in our communities? How do we learn to be with each other in a way where we commit to being beyond violent? And I talked about that in the first week. You can go back and listen to it online. And then the second week, we talked about love and how love does over and over again build bridges to greater possibilities, to greater life experiences, to greater us, to what we can be. And then last week, I talked about service and the role that service has, that when we all give our gifts, something far greater is created, because each one of us has something that God has instilled within our soul that we actually must give. And as we give it, not only do we heal the world, but we heal ourselves. And then tonight I want to talk about connection. As the fourth aspect of that is connection. And so one of the things I really want you to get clear with tonight is, are you functioning in your life from the place of highest connection? Are you feeling connected to life? Are you feeling connected to God? Are you feeling connected to the people around you? Because over and over again, as we look at this tonight, the research on this is fundamentally important. That the people that are the happiest and the healthiest feel connected. That over and over again, they feel more connected to life. They feel more connected to the people around them. They feel more connected to God. The happiest and the healthiest people are people that are connected. So how do we create a world that is increasingly moving high tech, and when high touch is the thing that makes the biggest difference? And being isolated in our little box or our little cube with a monitor or a screen or a tablet or a phone doesn't always give us an experience of high touch. And so over and over again, I'm going to challenge you tonight to really look at your level of connectivity to the world around you. And that's not your internet speed, right? Isn't that funny? That when we think of connectivity now, we think of internet speed. Well, I've got 44 megs, or I've got 50 megs, or I've got, a giga thing coming into my house, and right? And what I really want you to see tonight is I want your connectivity to be much more low tech. I want it to be flesh and blood, and people that you are actually with in meaningful ways, that you actually talk to, when you can actually see them face to face and hold their hands and be a part of that. See, really the whole thing about being connected is that it is incredibly powerful, it's incredibly healing, and it truly is transformative. But not all connections are of the highest way. Like, one of the ways that we connect is kind of tribal. We connect through our group, our club, our thing, and that excludes everybody else. Even in sports, we have our Cardinal fans, and you don't have to stand up. You can cheer and shout and be your Cardinal fans. But sometimes that goes too far. We heard stories in Philadelphia at the last game when the Minnesota Vikings were there, that the Philly fans were actually getting into fights and beating up Viking fans for just being in their stadium. All right, we clearly know that's the line, right? That we went over the line right there, right? That when our tribe gets so exclusive that we don't have relationship with people that are outside of our tribe, that's a problem. All racism comes from this tribal consciousness, this gang mob consciousness. How many of you have ever read Romeo and Juliet or seen the play or seen one of the movies they've done? How many of you remember what the two families' names were? Montague and Capulet, right? And the whole idea, has become an archetypal idea of young tragic lovers who were of different families who fall in love. And the whole thing was that they fell in love with people that were outside of their tribe, right? And that was so awful because in tribe mentality, the connection within the tribe is the only connection that counts, right? And it becomes tragic when the human heart doesn't identify with tribal thinking. Because the human heart's capacity for love is always beyond our tribe. Our heart doesn't always just stop at the lines of our tribe. How many of you have watched any of the Olympics over the last 2 weeks? Right? Now, one of the things that I think is so interesting that they're having to do in the Olympics is to really allow people to feel more and more engaged in the Olympics. They are telling, now how many of you would watch some of these sports if they weren't a part of the Olympics? Like 3 of us, right? Like you know, the fan base on, what's the thing with the stone that they slide? Hurling. Curling. Now, the fan base to curling is not quite up to NASCAR, right? But how do they get us to watch that, right? They get us to watch it by they tell us the stories of, they give us the connection with the people that are actually doing it, so we feel like they're our next door neighbor. They're our friend. We know their story. We now have a connection with them. And the moment we have a connection with anyone, does our interest in them go up or down? It goes through the roof. We will watch the weirdest. Now, I'm not saying curling is the weirdest sport, but it's up there, right? We will watch the weirdest sport the moment our heart is connected to one of the athletes. We will do it. And we will love doing it. We will root for them. We will cheer for them because we now know everything about them. Right? The moment we have a connection to someone, does your heart open or close? It opens. And there is a bit of manipulation because, I mean, they are telling us people's stories so that what? We watch it more and we watch it longer and we stay more engaged. But the underlying principle is true. The more I know about you, the more I care about you. The more I know about you, the more my heart opens. The more I know about you, the more I want you to succeed in every area of your life. The more I want to support you. Over and over again, when we have connections with others, we want them to succeed. And that every time we move to isolation, it becomes more and more difficult to have the connections that make the difference. You know, the research on this is really staggering. Do you know that the number one factor now for longevity is? The number one factor is social connection. It outweighs all the other biological factors. That the number one thing that in all the longevity studies, the number one thing is social connection. The more that we have social connections, the more that we not only live, but the more that we actually thrive. And so over and over again, what I want you to see is that I want you to look at how connected do you feel to your world? Because loneliness, actually, according to research, is now the number one killer. Loneliness has actually replaced cigarettes and obesity as the number one killer. That the more that we feel lonely, the closer we are to feeling our own demise. Because in loneliness, the research shows that it releases several hormones within the body that actually cause us to degrade. The more connected we feel, the more everything in our system, everything in our body actually begins to work. My sister's here, and I didn't tell her I was going to do this, but I'm going to put her on the spot. Christine, will you stand?
And when she stands, you won't be able to see the family resemblance at all. There is no guessing that we come from the same lineage, right? So my sister and her husband, Martin. Martin, will you stand? Martin's here tonight, too. You can sit down now, but thank you for standing. So Christine and Martin, they live in a little community called Hoo, H-O-O, right? It's in England. It's on the Hoo Peninsula, which is the southern end of when the Thames River comes out into the channel, the Hoo Peninsula is right there. And the little community of Hoo, if you Google it, it's like one intersection, right? It's like there's one pub. Not that that's a big thing, but it is. But there's two pubs. They've doubled the number of pubs in Hoo, right? So if you really want to ask them how things are going, ask them how it is in Whoville. They love the Whoville connection, right? So several years ago, my sister began to do, and correct me, a Hoo coffee morning at 10 a.m. on Wednesday morning. And what she did was and this wasn't a part of her job or anything, she began as her give back to the community to do a coffee hour for anybody who wanted to come out for coffee for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And she invited the whole community. And they actually went to start picking up people who were alone and feeling isolated. And so every Wednesday morning, they have a coffee hour. And all the coffee and the danishes and all the things are donated from the organizations in the town and the markets and the pubs. And they donate all the food and the coffee that they serve. And the idea is they don't want anyone to be alone. Isn't that a great idea? That they don't want anyone to be alone. And in fact, she became so popular because of her that they hired her to be in charge of what we would call a not-for-profit that's called Who Cares. Isn't that cute? H-O-O-O, H-O-O. Oh, that's what I said. H-O-O. Who cares? Or is it W-H-O? Oh, small w, big H-O. Who cares? So, and it's the idea that one of their fundamental things is to alleviate loneliness in their community. And do you know right now in England that they have actually a cabinet level position under the Prime Minister? It's the Minister of Loneliness. Isn't that fabulous? Like that as a whole nation, that they've taken on this image, this idea that loneliness kills and they're going to do something about it. Not only does it kill, but it's the number one killer. And that they're actually going to do everything that they can do to bring people together so to create relationships, because relationships and connections heal. Isn't that a fabulous thing? I think that is so fabulous that it's a cabinet level post. How many of you remember the Beatles song? All the lonely people, where do they all come from? All the lonely people, where do they all belong? Father McKenzie writing words of a sermon that no one will hear. No one comes near. Look at him working, darning his socks in the night when there's nobody there. What does he care? You know, one of the things as a church that I've always believed in is that part of our role, because our real commitment is to help people live better lives. But part of our role is sometimes it's not just about teaching spiritual principles. It's not even about helping people feel more connected to God. Sometimes our role is just to make sure that there's a place for people to go to get connected so they don't have to be lonely. Many years ago, we started a Saturday night service. And the underlying reason for that Saturday night service was also because we were growing beyond our ability to hold everybody. But the number one reason we did it on a Saturday night is because we had a friend in the church, and she was a single mom, and she said one time that the hardest night for her was Saturday nights, because after she dropped the kids off at their dad's, there was only so many things she could do. And she said many Saturday nights I would just wander Target or Walgreens because I didn't want to be alone on a Saturday night, but I didn't want to go to a bar or do that thing. And so I would just look for places to hang out. And so I want you to see over and over again that there are that there's loneliness in our world today. And it's kind of one of those things we don't really think is a problem until we're the one that's lonely. And then it feels terrible. It feels terrible when you feel like you're alone. And over again, what I want you to begin to see is how often we actually need to come together. We need connections. You know, there's other research that's just staggering to me about that the number one factor that determines the success of a child in school isn't economics of the family. It's not education of the parents. The thing that determines the success of a student in school is one adult who cares. One adult who cares. If every child has at least one adult that cares, it doesn't have to be father or mother. It's one adult. It could be a grandparent, an aunt, a neighbor. One adult who cares is the number one thing that defines the success of a child in school. One adult that cares. So that child knows that they're never alone. That they're actually people that are committed to their good, that are people that are committed to their success. One of the factors when we look at people that are truly high earners is high earners have the ability and are the willing to network with others to increase their sense of well-being, their sense of network. That high earners network over and over again more than any other economic group, because high earners have learned that the only way that you can really get there and stay there is when you do it together. And what we see also in immigrants who are coming to this country, that the most successful immigrants are those individuals who have a network of family and friends who are willing to work together for success. That those individuals, those families that are trying to do it on their own, you can do it on your own. It's just harder. And it takes longer. And you spend much more time alone. And socially, emotionally, financially, in every way imaginable, the more connected we are to the people around us, the more we thrive. And yet, so many people are feeling alone and isolated, and it's actually killing us. It's actually killing us. So you ready for your homework? Okay, the number one thing that I want you to see today is that I want you to really be on the lookout for the lonely. Now, how do you know? They don't wear hats. You know, if we could just get all the lonely people that wear hats, or when we're feeling lonely, if we just wore a hat, we would actually know, and we could gather all the lonely people together. And my suggestion is that you bring them here. You know, one of the things that I think we do really well here is do our circle groups, where we stick 6 or 12 people in a room for 5 weeks until they just love each other. And some groups, we make them go 2 years before they really love each other. Right? And the idea is that if you put a group of people together and you start listening and telling each other stories and listening to what's going on in each other's lives, it's hard for us not to open our hearts. And I want you to really pay attention to the times when you're feeling lonely, because there's a part of us when we're feeling lonely that we're convinced that we're the only one. Have you ever felt lonely? Yet when we feel lonely, we're convinced that we're the only one that's ever lonely. We're assuming that everybody else has lots of friends and family around them, and they don't need our story, and they don't need to hear our sad stories and our woes and our things. But the reality is, what I want you to see is that we have a role to play in healing of our world. And what if the most dramatic thing that we do in healing of our world is end loneliness? One of the things that my wife Jill's been doing, you know, she's been kind of homebound-ish for the last 3 years. And when you've been at home for a lot of time, you know, it gets to be tough. And so she's kind of shifted her ministry to our neighborhood, right? And so she knows, maybe not everybody in our neighborhood, but she knows so many people in our neighborhood. And I say to her, well, who's that? And she knows like everything about them, their dog's name, their cat's name. She knows everything about them. And what begins to happen is And because, you've seen my dog Sebastian, the big curly thing? Sebastian is our goodwill ambassador, right? Because he's so floppy and adorable, like the whole neighborhood says, oh, you're Sebastian's parent, right? Right? And the idea is here, I want you to really look at what role you're willing to take to end loneliness on our planet. I want you to really look at what level you're committed to reaching out beyond your own insecurities, beyond your own ego sense of who you are, to really reach out to the people around you who are lonely. And what if we really took this on individually and collectively? What if we decided that we were going to reach out and at least just invite people to church? And just keep inviting people to church. So nobody had to be alone. Because what happens if you come a few times and it's acceptable, you just start going to more and more things. And before you know it, there's a community of people around you who just will love you and pray for you and believe in you and trust you. And you have a social network that's created just from once and then twice and then 3 times and then over and over again. I know it seems simplistic. Like, how could we heal the whole planet just by alleviating loneliness? But I absolutely double dog guarantee you that I think it's the only way it's going to work. What if we just eliminated loneliness in our community? Do you think there's at least one lonely person on your block that really just doesn't know what to do with themselves? I would say yes. In your block, your area, 3 or 4 houses on either side of you, or in the apartment next door, or across the way, in your condo, wherever you live, I absolutely believe that if we took this on, we could see a radical difference in the life expectancy of the people that are the closest to us, geographically. So you ready? So I want you to look at your own life. And I want you to look at the times when you feel lonely and what are you doing about it? Because I know that when we feel lonely, we really want somebody to burst through the door, grab us, and take us out to a wonderful time. But sometimes when we're feeling lonely, guess who's the one that needs to act first? We do. We actually have to move ourselves and to have a connection with somebody else so that not only do we get healed in that, but they get healed in that. And then we need to pay attention. We need to pay attention to the people around us. To really look to see who are the people that are feeling isolated, feeling alone. And are you willing to reach out to them? Now, it doesn't mean that they have to move into your guest bedroom. Right? It doesn't mean you have to spend every day with them. But a concerted effort to reach out and connect so that they know over and over again that somebody cares. See, I'm serious about this because I've watched it work. And I believe that this is a gift that we could all give the world. That you don't really need a special skill. You don't need a special educational process. You just need an inner commitment that says, I don't want anybody to be lonely. And I'm going to take one person at a time and do what I can to end isolation. Because nobody's winning in isolation. Okay, you ready? So everybody here with the homework. So the homework is twofold. When you're feeling isolated, when you're feeling alone, when you're feeling lonely, I want you to do something about it. Okay? I want you to actually either get on the phone or go out your front door, and you don't have to make more than about 20 steps in any direction to find another person who's isolated. True? And then I want you to be mindful. I want you to really be aware of the people in your life, in your circle, in your neighborhood, on your street, who are maybe wondering if they feel isolated or alone. And I want you to say, why don't you just come with me to church? This is a great group of people, right? Most of them are on parole, but it's a great group of people. Right? It's a great group of people. And I think that it would feel good for you to have a place to come on Wednesday nights or Sunday mornings, because it makes a difference. That over and over and over again, we have the ability to heal right before us, but we have to do it. We have to do it. One person. Just start with one. And see if you don't feel better as you reach out to another. Will you pray with me? I invite you to open your mind, your heart, your soul to the activity of God that is right here, right now. That God in us is amazing. And tonight we make the internal commitment to be willing to reach out to others. To befriend those who need a friend. To reach out to those who may be feeling lonely or isolated. And know that as we reach out to them, not only are we blessed, but they're blessed. That we are meant to be in community. We are meant to be together. And we give thanks for a community that is greater, for the power of relationships, and for the connection that makes a difference. In the name and through the power of the living Christ, we give thanks. And so it is. Amen.